how much of what I'm doing today actually fits in with the life and the world that I want to see? Because so many of us, I know I've definitely feel this way at times, that I'm living in a world, in an existence that doesn't actually feel right to me. But I continue to do that. I continue to perpetuate it because I don't know what else to do. All right, Rising Man family, here we are on site. Beautiful outskirts of Death Valley. Here with 7 men fasting behind us on day 2 of their fast for Compass. I'm here with the one, the only Shawn Berry. It's good to be out here with you, man.
Yeah, really good to be out here too. Can't think of a better place to be and have this kind of conversation.
Yeah, it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
We're day 2 mellow vibes right now.
Yeah,
all the great reflections that come in with so much of that stillness.
Yeah, and it's just nice to have a conversation in context, instead of just the theoretical back in the modern world of what we're doing usually.
Yeah, it's kind of weird sitting in a house with 4 walls with a microphone in front of our faces trying to talk about this.
Yeah.
And really capture what this is.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's hard enough to capture it in words anyway, so at least a little visual reference is helpful if you're watching on YouTube.
Yeah. So we've had so many great conversations over the years, Shawn. For those folks who don't know, you took me out on my fast in 2014, and in the past 4 or 5 years, we've been working to bring more and more men across the threshold here. And one of the conversations that we really wanted to have today was about this model for what the new world can look like, and an old model that we need for this new world. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think more than ever, it's something I've been saying frequently, and which is, it's I believe the earth wants us to be nature connected to it, wants to be connected to it. And if you just look at the course of humanity over the tens of thousands of, however far back you want to go, it's a long time that we were sort of in that synchronous, link up with just living in good relationship with the earth. And then somewhere we started doing things differently, and now everyone's nature aware, just because of the headline news. Like, everyone knows what's going on in the planet, and it does seem like it's really time for us to be taking a look at, like, how did we get here? What is the actions and choices and ideals and concepts around success and progressing into the future brought us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about that a lot too. I've been in conversation with a lot of men over the years, and we're always talking about vision and mission and what am I creating in my life, and there's that masculine direction that we have as men. And I think for many of us, I know I for sure at times I feel that there's this sense of achievement or accomplishment that needs to be associated with what vision looks like, or that the size or scale of my vision is relative to how much success I had as a man. Did I do the best that I possibly could? And then it seems like every time we come out here, I'm just reminded of how simple it really is to make an impact. How simple, not easy, but how simple it is to really make an impact that lasts. And I know you and I were just discussing these past couple of days about how to get men to really see that there is a way for you to build a life that is not only fulfilling to you, but is service-driven and impactful to the people around you without it having to be some large spectacle of a vision. And I don't know, something about being out here, you and I talk about how the pace just seems to slow down. We're tethered to less of the outside world, and it doesn't feel like we actually need to do much more than just be who we already are.
Yeah, it is. I almost said a strange phenomena, but I actually think the strange phenomena is how we live in the modern world. That's a strange phenomena, because it does feel very, I don't want to be busy out here. Like, it feels great just to contend with just what feels like might be almost boredom, but isn't really boredom. It's just the sense of there's time to be aware, there's time to be present, there's time to have meaningful like every conversation is meaningful out here, and or funny or humorous. It's like, and I find that just really fulfilling in and of itself. So yeah, then I start to get into this questioning mind of knowing that in a few days we'll all of us, we'll be going back to the lives that are waiting for us and the culture and conditions we've created about what is supposed to generate success for us. And there's always a little bit of a what do they call it when you travel somewhere and then you leave and come back and you have a culture shock. There's a little bit of a culture shock, which is really interesting to think about what's waiting for us to contend with. And yeah, while there's always going to be the conveniences and comfort that feel good to come back to, I don't think, at least from the conversations we have out here with men who are coming in, that's never their concern. They're never worried about, they're never like, oh, I can't wait to, I guess the most important thing is to like be sleeping in my bed and eating a good meal. Like, yes, they want to do that. But when we really have the conversations about what's important, the real concerns are how this experience of them getting in touch with who they truly believe they should be, the rightness of the authenticity and the vision of their best self is, and a lot of times in conflict with a lot of the things they've set up to live their life out, back down there.
Yeah, it's one of the things that seems so obvious out here is how much we're contending with the world when we step back onto the road, onto the pavement, when we step out of these spaces where it's so clear and it's so simple to see who we really are, that we go back out into the world and we're literally contending. It's like shooting yourself in the foot. We're literally contending with all of these constructs of society, comfy beds, taxes, bills, keeping up certain images and connections and contact with people. And one of the things we were talking about this morning was really encouraging guys to audit your life, like really take a good look at what your life looks like and decide how much of that actually fits in with what I want. How much of that actually fits in with what I want to be creating today? How much of what I'm doing today actually fits in with the life and the world that I want to see? Because so many of us, I know I've definitely feel this way at times, that I'm living in a world and in an existence that doesn't actually feel right to me. But I continue to do that. I continue to perpetuate it because I don't know what else to do or how else to do that. And that's really the battle. And I know that's been a very personal journey for you, especially in these past 1 year, 2 years of really discovering what that looks like. So,
yeah.
So what have you discovered in that time of figuring out that world you want to live in?
Yeah, it's been, what have I learned? Well, first, I'd like to say that, I'm privileged to explore and experiment with following that inkling only because I don't have kids. I don't have a partner that I'm committed to, or a partner, period. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a car payment. I don't have a career where there's people depending on me to show up every day and do what I do. So, and both, some of that's by choice, some of that's by results of making other choices that kind of resulted in those things happening. And what I've been learning from having the spaciousness and the time to just be focused up on, incorporation, what we call incorporation, what happens when you come out of the fast and to go back to your world and try to bring that vision of the self, the best self you can be, and try to then start living into your world as that person, what it really takes. And I did a rite of passage in 2016, which is roughly 7 years ago. And that was the third time I had done a rite of passage. And also having been a guide, I'm very familiar with, the show and what's the expectations and what's going to happen and all that stuff. But I can really say I've been surprised by how potently and powerfully and how long it can take for the manifestation of that vision of self to actually show up in the physical world around me. And when guys come out of the threshold that fifth morning, internal transformation happens like in an instant, right? The internal world can change how you view the world instantly. There's nothing, it's non-material, so there's no resistance. But then going back into the actual physical world of, like rocks and things and structures and buildings and vehicles and other people, all this stuff, then it's the ripple effect can take time to sort of move through all these, levels of material. And And I'm just finding that, more and more, as I get more and more connected to the empowerment that's within that self I visualize for myself and taking actions based on that empowerment, it's a little scary in the sense that more and more and more, I don't really want to, I'm losing my interest more and more to be engaged in this culture and society that we've created. For better or for worse, So I guess to wrap that little segment up, just saying that what I've learned is that it can take time. It can take a lot of time, even if you know what this is about and have all the time and space in the world like I have. It's still taking me almost 7 years to start to feel like that incorporation is really taking hold. And second to that, it feels good in a lot of ways, but also just becomes more and more like, well, where is this going? It's a little scary. And so I've learned to lean into this idea of faith a lot more, like faith in practice as opposed to faith in idea. And I've also learned how to lean into my community and my support system more realistically, more than I ever have before, because I've found myself in situations that are producing emotions and stories in my head about what's going to happen because I can't really tell where this is going. And usually those pictures and ideas aren't good. So it's been really important to lean into my brotherhood and also my sisterhood to just bounce those stories and I'm telling myself about where is this going and how it's not good, and just get that support and the outside perspective to help me just sort of like normalize, like I'm on the right path. I'm on the right path. In fact, the more and more I kind of follow this path, the more and more support and affirmation I'm getting, which is really interesting. So
it brings up a thought for me that a lot of times in personal development work, personal growth work, we're often talking about stories that we want to crumple up and throw out about ourselves, about the world, about the reality that we've lived in, or what I've believed about myself up until now. But there's the other side of that, of building up the stories that we want to believe about ourselves. At the end of the day, they're all stories. And the story that I tell myself about who I am and what I'm bringing to the world, how I reference myself and create an identity and a direction forward, it needs a community to hold that. In the same way that those old stories that I don't want to hold on to, sometimes I've had to distance myself from that community or those people who reflect back that story that I don't want to hold on to anymore.
Yeah.
And so we talk about, just for context purposes, for everyone who doesn't know what Compass is a rite of passage ceremony that we offer here in Rising Man, with 2 months of what we call severance, the process of letting go of, releasing, preparing for transformation.
Doing that audit,
yeah, like looking at life, right? Like reviewing that whole chapter and saying what's worked, what hasn't, what gets to stick around, what needs to go. And then threshold, where we are now, the 4 days of solo wilderness fasting by yourself out there behind where we are. And then incorporation, but that hardest step of bringing that clarity from the world out here and applying that to the life that's waiting back home. So in the spirit of that, just focusing in on the incorporation piece, whether people are participating in a rite of passage or not, this idea of creating an environment for ourselves, a container or a structure, if you will, that can hold the story that I want to believe about myself, so that when I have doubts, I can bounce off of the wall and come back to center. Or when it's really difficult, I can, whether it's a conversation or a community event that just keeps me close enough to the path so that I don't veer all the way off. What do you think that looks like for people? Like actually looks like for people? Because the concept of it is great, but the application of it is really the challenge.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. And I think there's a trend in our just general kind of, Western, especially American society and culture too, where there's, we're in this wonderful age of access and information and ideas and concepts and all the ways that people are using their creativity to put together programs to offer people opportunity to be in that process of discovery and then application. And the most difficult part is is how to support that new realization or transformation, if it's that powerful, or new way of being. And I know for me, the number one thing is it has to be, again, is there one person? Who's that first one person you would go to? And a lot of times it's better if it's someone who's not directly involved in your day-to-day life, where there may be conflicts of interest,
Tethers and attachments.
So getting a mentor or an elder, or having an uncle or someone at work, or a good friend that's, basically just finding that, I guess for me, it's like coming to a point in life where you have this idea that comes back. You don't act on it, but I kind of want to, but I don't know how to, but finally you decide, and I find myself starting to talk about it, it's like, I'm thinking about doing this thing, or I want to really, want to change this part of my life. And believe it or not, that's actually enrolling. That is the nature of enrolling, is you start communicating a vision of yourself, whether you're intending to or not, just because there's something in you desiring change, that sees a better version of yourself out there doing things in a different way. And finding that first one person who you can really sit down and in a very conscious, deliberate way communicate the entirety of where you're at and where you want to be. And then have that person just help you thresh out the steps to begin that journey of moving through that space. Mm-hmm. And so words like accountability and support and checking in, and also I think it's important to define that relationship really clearly. So whatever you're calling them, a good friend, an elder, a mentor, whatever, that there's those moments and times where you're stepping into that space with them in those roles, and you stay in that role. So it keeps it really clean. And from that one person, then it's like, the more people you can get around you are helping you, support you and hold that space and that vision for yourself, then the more, I'll just say one example that's, I was just sharing with you yesterday about my friend Katrina, who, so I've been doing this writing project, and it's been this, I don't really never considered myself a writer, but it's just this thing I started a few years ago, and it's become book length. And I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm spending all this time on this huge writing project, and people know about it, but I've also been kind of keeping it a little bit on the down low, because I'm like, I don't know if this is even really a valid thing. And I've been kind of reluctant to enroll that support because I didn't want to disappoint people, or I didn't know how committed I was going to be to it. And if I got a bunch of people who were like behind me and then I was like, stop doing it, then it's like disappointing to them. But it's really gotten to a point where I did share it with a few people, and Katrina was one of them. And she just recently had a friend who got a publishing deal with a book, and one thing led to another, and she's like, hey, I talked to my friend, and he can get your, manuscript in for a look with this, publisher, the actual editor, not an agent, not someone like the top person. Right. And I was like, wow, great. Okay. And she writes as well. So, and I trust her opinion and, her sensibilities. And so she spent, anywhere from like 6 to 8 hours over 2 days before we came out here, because we had to get it done before I came out here, right, helping me write a cover letter and writing basically a synopsis of this book, which I haven't done yet, and then taking a 1,500 word excerpt and cleaning it up and getting the verbiage right and all this stuff. And to me, that made the idea, the vision of me being a writer that much more real, because here was someone who took their time. And when, without me even asking, they're like, oh, my friend Shawn, like, And so getting people around you who are really willing and wanting to see you in the way that you want to see yourself, it's like one of the best mirrors. Mm-hmm. It's one of the best mirrors. Because I can speak from my own experience. I still don't know if this thing's ever going to see the light of day in the way that I think it could. It might be a pile of crap. I don't know, but the only way I'm gonna keep going into that place of unknowing is having people behind me who are like, you can do this. We know you can do this. I want to help you do this. I believe that this is a good thing, and that's incredibly powerful to have those kind of people around you.
Yeah, I like that you said mirrors. I was thinking of this. It's funny how the mind works. The first Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser, and there's that one scene where they move the mirrors around in like the treasure room, and all of a sudden it redirects the sun and it lights up the whole room. And that image just flashed in my mind when you were talking, and then you said the word mirrors, and just contemplating vision and how with what we have available to us, resources, communication, technology, there's really not much that a person cannot do on this planet. So, I mean, I haven't really heard anybody who's come out here and fasted with us communicate a genuine vision from their heart, something that they saw within themselves when they were just with the quiet of themselves and the natural environment that didn't seem far-fetched or unrealistic. Even big visions, everything seems achievable. I know for myself, when I'm just thinking about that inside of my own head, inside of my own world, that's when sometimes the vision feels like it gets bigger than me. And so this idea of mirrors, like arranging people at the right times, the right communities, the right groups or events that I participate in that just keep reflecting that power back to me. It's like one of the best things about having mentorship or a men's team or a support group is to have people who can believe in me before I really believe in myself. Or for those moments, to supplement those moments when I don't believe in myself or doubt or fear creeps in. Because at this stage, there's really not much that I can't create. And maybe the idea that I have about what exactly it would look like adjusts or changes over time. But like you were saying, with the right amount of support, the right connection, opportunity, all of it's possible. You know, even if you didn't believe or really know if you could publish a book, there's probably even many ways for that to happen and to come true. And that's the key there. And that's so that when we think about this conversation that we're having and speaking to men out there, it's so easy to just shut that part off because of the things that are right in front of me in my day-to-day life. It's so easy to feel overwhelmed by that when I think there's actually a fundamental shift. If I start, and I've seen this a lot in you, if I start to really just focus on the thing, make the main thing as over and over again, as much as I possibly can, strip away the other things that don't fit, then conversations like you had with your friend Katrina, they just start to like penetrate the membrane and take it to a whole nother level. Yeah.
Well, that's a nuance that we haven't really talked about yet, which is you can't do it all. You can't. Even though the message out there is you can do anything, but you really can only do one thing of anything if you're going to do it well. And I've been noticing just in general, not just with this writing project, but just in general, just due to age and just noticing that energy is finite and there's, I don't think about time in the same way I do at, mid 50s and I did when I was in my mid 20s. I can feel the sense of like, life is short. And yeah, picking, well, the way I said it to you the other day was like, this book project is really important. And as much as I would love to have a partner, and as much as I would like to have a home that I call home and is comfortable to live in, and as much as I would like to have a career direction that I'm all in with and, feel really valued at, right now with the book project where it's at, like those would all be taking time away from this project. And that was sort of a like, wow, okay. Because I keep thinking sometimes like, am I crazy for spending so much time on this project that's just, who knows where it's going to go? It's just something that's been this passion project and consumed a lot of time and made me make decisions that have set me up so that I have a lot of spaciousness to contribute to it. But then looking at that from the flip side of like, well, I wouldn't be doing this project if I had a regular kind of full-time job alone where I was spending 35 to 45 hours a week not working on this book would never get done. For me anyways, because I'm not someone who's going to burn the midnight oil. I like to just maintain my, just general well-being with my health and decisions. And so I find that kind of fun, interesting too of, you you can have it all, but there's going to be a couple things that if you really want them to go all the way to the vision you have for yourself in them, there's a lot of no's to that one yes.
Yeah, that's the big one. You're right. We haven't talked about that so far, is the sacrifice that needs to be made. It can often be painful. I know a lot of guys, I mean, at this point, just together, we've brought, after these guys come back, over 70 guys across that threshold. And every single one of those men coming back with greater clarity and greater vision about what they want to create in their lives, knowing that certain things are going to have to go. Whether it's relationships, behaviors, ways of being, ways of living, all of it. It's all got to be audited, like you were saying before.
Yeah, no one comes up here saying like, yeah, my week was chill getting up here. Like, I just got on the plane and all's good. Like, no, people are like jamming to get things done. Like all the things in their lives, they're trying to get wrapped up and done so they have a week free to come out and do this. And knowing that as soon as they get back there, you get slammed right back into it. Like people's lives are full. And this is such a full process, and you become so full with the vision of who you want to be and the life you want to create. It's like, you got to start emptying cups.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big objections that I'm hearing from men more and more these days is when we tell them, because we tell people it's 4 days of solo fasting, but then we say, but we need you to be out here off the grid with us for 8 days. Like, well, wait a second, you said 4 days. And when you really think about that, we can't just scoop you up from the airport, kick you out of the van, and then pick you up 4 days later and send you home. There's processing and preparations and integration that needs to happen. So, but just the objection for people when they think about spending that much of their time away, I think there's just a fear of how could I possibly do that? And to me, it's a reflection of just how loosely glued together our lives actually are. That to take 8 days for ourselves to really step out and reflect and review one's life, it seems like that much of a cost. It's usually not the time, the money, the resources. It's time. It is time. It's not money. It's not all the other things. It's usually, how can I take that much time away from what I'm doing? Right. So to me, that suggests that each of our lives are being held together so delicately by, like, what if I miss a day or 2 or 3 or 8, that everything will just fall apart.
Yeah, it's funny though. I was just thinking, like, if someone was planning to take an 8-day vacation and the vacation company calls you and says, oh, actually it's only a 4-day vacation, he'd be like, what? I want 8 days, and which makes you think about, like, I think a lot of people, or my perception anyways, just based on my own path, look at vacations as a reward for just working so hard, built like, just look, like this is a reward to take that kind of time off. And something like this isn't seen so much as a reward, it's seen more as like work maybe, And I'm finding as I do this process more often, I mean, I've done 3 rites of passages, but I've gone out to fast ceremonially, I think like 7 times now over the last 20 years. And every time it starts to feel more and more like, I don't know if I'd say a vacation, but like desirable. It's desirable. Like I'm looking forward to coming out and spending this kind of time away and just minimizing, not living the vacations. You tend to like, the pocketbook's open. It's like, let's just do it all. See everything, just extravagant meals, nice motel rooms. And out here, it's like the opposite. It's like the other side, just to keep talking about mirrors, it's like the other side of the mirror, which is like, how much can I strip away and just be in the essence of beingness and get in touch with the self-love around just recognizing that I'm this, look at me. I'm this amazing like thing walking around on the surface of the planet, aware, conscious, present to all the magnificence that's just in nature before humans decided to make anything out of it. And to me, like, to take that kind of getting back down to that awe and wonder and kind of just the mystery, the foundations of how life even exists on this earth, let alone humans, and kind of bring that back into your normal world. That's, to me, like, when people go out to do this process and they come back and they go home, they're bringing this back with them. People can feel it. They don't, maybe they can't name it or, really understand what it is, but there is an eminence that's coming off of the men who come back from this place because they got the dust of the desert on them, and the voice of the mountains that's coming through. The it's like they're shifted, and that's a gift for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I think of the word vacation. First of all, most people I hear go on vacation, they come home and they're exhausted.
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's so ironic, right? Like most people talk about vacation as relaxing, reflecting, but so many people come back and they're like, oh, I need a vacation from my vacation. And so I wonder how much people are really getting from that time. And obviously it's broad strokes. Everybody does vacation differently, but how much are you actually getting that's helping you in your life by taking a week to go wherever you're going? In comparison to an experience like Compass or an experience of immersion. So instead of vacating, the opposite would be occupying, right?
Yeah.
Instead of a vacation, it's occupation. Right? What does it look like to occupy your life instead of to vacate it and escape from it, to dive deeper into it? I get it. I mean, it's not in the mind, the ego isn't really excited about sleeping on the ground under the stars without food for 4 days and 4 nights. I get that. But I believe there's just so much more of a reward from doing that. Instead of having a few days of enjoying some daiquiris and hanging out by the pool and getting sunburnt and then eating too much at dinner and then coming home and feeling like, now I got to get back to the gym. And now I got to,
yeah.
It's like, which one is really moving you forward in your life?
Yeah, what's coming to me is like, what's more valuable? Is it living a rewarding life or rewarding yourself for the life you lived? And let's go back half a step because I was just, you're asking me, or we were talking about me and just like building support to do the vision and stuff. And then you were speaking about just kind of what that looks like in different ways. Rising Man is such a great example of having an idea that you were chatting about to a few people probably, and now 6 years later, 7 years.
Yeah, 5, 6 at least.
Yeah, it's people know about it. There's 6 or 7 programs. There's over 100 and some men involved in various levels of participation. So I think it'd be great for people to hear a little bit about how you use that same idea of enrolling support to get to this place with your vision of this program. Yeah,
well, something I've learned about vision is that it's fluid, it's dynamic. To me, vision is actually feminine in its purest form, right? Like I think of vision like almost like a dream where it can change from 1 minute to the next. The implementation of a vision, like the execution of a vision, is very masculine, right? That's like nuts and bolts and spreadsheets and diagrams and strategy. But vision itself is very fluid. And when I went out and fasted in 2014, I didn't come back and say, I'm going to create an international movement for men and we're going to incorporate rites of passage. But I knew that part of my work was to help support men getting more familiar with every aspect of our lives, especially the shadow side. That was what I came out of from my vision fast with, was not only I need to start being more familiar with all aspects of myself, I really need to look at myself, and then I need to encourage other men around me to do the same. And that was back in 2014. The first episode of this podcast was published in spring of 2018. So there was 4 years in there where I was just gathering resources, gathering experiences, spending a lot of time meditating, exercising, diving deeper into understanding rites of passage and learning how to support in those ceremonies and in those communities, deeper into men's work and how to lead men. And then somehow at some point it formulated into a new form of a vision, right? That vision evolved over several steps, actually, because originally I thought, when you were a big part of this from the beginning, I thought we were just going to do this work with teenagers. And then we did this work with teenagers and we said,
hell no.
Not yet. I think it was hell no and not yet.
Yeah.
And realizing that we needed to create a generation of initiated men first that could receive these boys who were looking for that.
Yeah.
And that's really what Rising Man was born from it. And then even within the past 5 years, Rising Man has evolved so much from just wanting to have the conversation about what it means to be a man to now actually how do we support men in really taking that on and creating what that looks like for themselves. So, oh gosh, I mean, so many conversations with so many people. I mean, we've logged hundreds of hours, you and I, in the past 7-8 years of just what Rising Man is and how it's evolving. Lots of attempts and successes and failures. And, you know, I was reflecting on this particularly this week because in my life, it's been very challenging. There's been a lot of transition in my life in the past couple of years. But
yeah, let me just pause there. So this is almost like an exact black and white situation because where I don't really have anything to contend with in pursuing my visions. You've got a family, you've got kids, you've got, you don't have a mortgage, but you're basically providing for your family a certain way that you want to make them feel good. So there's a lot extra in there. And, and thinking about it. So how does somebody, as you continue to talk, just what were the struggles with trying to balance life with and family with your pursuit and vision?
Well, I would retort back that they're just different obstacles. You've had your own, I've had mine. And I think mine are the ones that a lot of guys have out there, family, relationship, all the other stuff. Ultimately, it's been deciding, it's been re-enrolling myself in the vision over and over. I think they say 80% of small businesses and startups fail within the first year. And even just taking that out of a business context, I wonder what the percentages and data would be about visions. How many visions fail or get scrapped and tossed into the garbage can after a year or 2 years? Most of them probably don't even make it that far. Maybe they're just dreams that never even take those first few steps. So ultimately, it's been just enrolling myself over and over again. A lot of that has been support from guys like you, other people in my life who just encouraged me along the way. I swear, I say this on the podcast all the time, but how many times I've gotten a message from somebody that I don't even know who just says, man, I've been listening to the podcast for 2 years and that last episode just totally hit home for me. And I just had an amazing conversation with my father for the first time in 20 years. And that, just all these different fuel sources that help me keep going. It's also just surrounding myself with those mirrors, like the hall of mirrors, those relationships that remind me of who I am. Starting with my wife, I mean, just to be able to do what I've done, it wouldn't be possible if I had a partner who wasn't all into. The first time that we came out here, the first round of Compass back in, spring of 2019, she was 9 months pregnant with my daughter. I remember hiking up this canyon and getting into base camp with you and being like, Shawn, I might have a second child right now. And not only that, I might be a father for the second time and soon to be divorced because my wife is going to kill me. But yeah, just and so many of those relationships and moments that have just reminded me along the way. I mean, now that you asked me about it, just really reviewing, there's been so many of those times where just a little bit has just kept me going.
Well, I'm curious about you because you said, re-enrolling yourself. And that's one of those kind of ideas that I'm like, well, so how do you do that? What does that look like? Because I know for myself, there's a lot of times where I find myself in those days where I just don't have it in me. Yeah. I don't want to. And I have a Netflix day, whatever, where I'm just like, fuck it. I can't, I won't, I'm done. And then, I'm getting better, but it would take me a long time to reach out, which is usually one of the big first steps. But sometimes I would just get lucky and someone would call me and be like, dude, what's up? Where you at? You missed a call or whatever. Like, oh shit, and then other, like everyone has their strategies, but specifically for you, I'm just curious, like how does re-enrolling look like for you? Like, what are your strategies? What do you do?
That's a really good question. The simplest one for me is picking up the phone, which I've gotten a lot better at doing myself. I think I've been naturally just pretty good at that over the years because I know who to call when I need a kick in the butt. I know who to call when I need somebody who's just going to say, hey, man, I know it's hard, but could you really wake up tomorrow and throw all of this away? Could you really do that? I've got men in my life who even if they don't answer their phone, I just hear their voice on their voicemail. I know what they're going to say to me because I've been in a relationship with them for that long. Guys like you, and that's a big part of it. I also, one of the advantages I do have, even if it's an extra, on one hand, it's an extra obstacle, just my children. I go home, especially my son. I look at Sitka, he's 7 now. I think to myself, man, if I gave up now, he won't have any of this. Because if he doesn't see me doing it, if he doesn't see me making it matter, why would he? Why would he decide to do that? So a lot of times it's looking outside of myself, because the times where I want to give up, it's all about me. It's because I'm tired. It's because something didn't work out. It's because my finances are tight for that month or whatever, right? It's something that's making my existence uncomfortable. Synonymous with like having a splinter in my finger, right? It's like the instinct is to get it out. So in those times in my life, whatever the circumstances are, it's like my body and my ego is just saying, get me out of this situation. So whether it's a conversation or even, I have reminders everywhere in my life. I have a little wooden artifact that one of the elders in our community, Cap Young, made for me that has my name on it and my mission in life. And I look at that and I'm like, yeah, I see things like that every day. So I guess if we want to stay on brand with the metaphor, there's these little mirrors that I've put up in my life, and I know which ones to look into at this point. And sometimes they're also like emergency mirrors that I set up for myself that I really don't want to look at, but I can't help but do that. Maybe think of it as a fail-safe, where I think of my men's team, for example. I know they're counting on me to be there in 2 weeks. And if I'm not there, they don't hear from me, I'm going to get a call. And not only a call, it's going to be like, where the hell are you? What are you doing? So at minimum, right, I could disappear for up to 2 weeks, max. And then I've got someone reeling me back in. So yeah, it's different versions of that. And then I guess, because there are times where I can hide out with the best of them. We all can be really good at that. I think it's just having done that routine, that dance over the years of like, I just want to lean away from this. I want to lean away. I want to get more comfortable. And then like calling myself back in. That's just a practice. That's just having done it over and over again over the years. So yeah.
Well, let's dig in that a little bit too, because I'm curious. So
this is nice. I was hoping you were going to end up interviewing me.
Well, nobody ever does. My plan. No. So when what you just said about like, actually, I don't even remember how you said it, but something about calling yourself back. What is it? What do you usually find it is that if you don't get that call in, or whatever, you don't get what you need in that moment of re-enrollment from outside, and it does come back around, what do you feel like is usually the tenets or the principles or the passions that kind of really spark you back to like, what is it that really, really says, I do want to do this, even though this thing right now seems insurmountable?
Well, what just came to my mind is sometimes it's thinking way into the future. Like on my deathbed, my last few years of life, looking back and saying, when I literally can't do anything about it anymore, and would I be able to live with myself if I just mailed it in, or if I threw in the towel and just lived a conventional life? That's one. The other is because I've kind of built up this leverage around myself. On one hand, sometimes it feels like a lot of heavy pressure, but it's also a secret sauce, because I know that there's people counting on me to live my life at a certain standard. There's people who are looking to me. I know that I'm an example. I know that I'm a role model for people, at minimum my children and my nieces and nephews. So I don't want to let them down. And I think about that. I think about, okay, so I'm human. Yes, I'm going to have my Netflix days just like you. Yes, I'm going to have moments where I want to give up. But overall, am I choosing to lean back in? Am I going to just put in a little extra effort and lift that weight a little bit higher so that somebody else can see what that looks like, or someone else won't have to do as much of the heavy lifting. And I believe that we all have that in us somewhere. I really do. I believe that every single one of us wants to do that on behalf of other people. I think it's wired into our DNA. Some of us may be more connected to it than others, but I've always kind of been that way, that I want to do my best for other people. So there's just reminding myself of the values that I have, and I don't want to be a hypocrite. You know, I want to be walking my talk. I don't want to be saying a bunch of things on the podcast and then living my life as this, you know, reclusive, hedonistic version of myself that I can be if I let myself go. So I think I've just kind of built up a lot of leverage around myself, and the key to that for me has been not expecting that I'm always going to be perfect, because that's when the plummet from that standard can be really, really painful if I fall.
Yeah,
so that's the balance.
Right on. Yeah, good to hear all that.
Yeah, thanks for asking, because it's kind of funny. I was thinking before we started recording here today, I thought at some point maybe you would ask me some questions, and I just kind of followed through with that. It was great. You know, it really gets me thinking about how, because I realize how much I take for granted of just how long I've been doing this for, how long I've been chipping away at my vision. And even I said that out loud, you know, the first time we brought a compass group out here in 2019, and I'm like, it feels like a long time ago, but it's really it's like 3.5 years ago.
Right.
So even that first group of men who came through, who caught a vision out here and have been incorporating that ever since, they're still just getting started. Like 3.5 years into my incorporation, Rising Men didn't even exist yet. So I think that's the other piece that I really want to speak about right now, is just how much of a long game incorporation really is, and having a vision and implementing it. It's not the fast lane at all. It's not, and it can't be. And I mean, you're an even better example of that than I am, because you first fasted in 1998.
Yeah.
Right? We're 24 years into your, you know, essentially into your incorporation with different chapters along the way. So maybe you turn the spotlight back to you, speaking to long range incorporation, because I know that that's been an up and down journey for you too.
Yeah, for sure. What can I say about that? You know, I did start out kind of on the, you know, semi-traditional path. I, you know, spent the first almost 25 years of my life doing motion graphics and computer animation. I was living in Hollywood and making good money and doing a lot of fun things, had a band, did a little acting. I was kind of, you know, really doing it all. And on the sidetrack of that, I was also learning how to do rites of passage work, and, you know, through Condor Clan and training and learning how to take people out. And it really just came to a point where in 98, it's interesting, I should go to that journal and look up what my power statement was from then. I'd be very curious to read it. And I think a lot of the times what happens for me anyways is, and I think for anyone is, you know, when you focus up on that vision of the self you want to be, and at any given moment, it's a speck of time on the timeline. And it may seem clear to you in that moment of that context of that time of where you are in your life, but then it's a living thing. Like I feel like a vision, a self vision is a living thing. It changes as you go, not necessarily, I wouldn't say change it. It becomes more clear, I guess. It refines, like a wine. It just kind of ages, gets better with time, and things have become revealed to me. That when I'm like, oh, I thought this was what it was going to be based on what I was perceiving, this vision of self. But now that I've got more experience and have made different choices, it's another version. It's a cleaner, more concise, more focused version of that. And it's similar to what I was saying earlier it's about the transition from saying yes to everything to saying no to everything. You know, and realizing that at a certain point in my life, incorporation was all about coming to a place where, I mean, I never thought that I was, so this is great too, because I've said this before. So the last 2 years I've been living in a yurt in Santa Cruz, down at the bottom of this like little slope and a shade line. It's been, you know, it's cold in the winters there. I don't have a view. It's kind of dark and shady. I haven't had a job. Don't have a partner. I haven't been having sex. It's just like on the surface, it's not been a great life. And I was really going through a lot of grieving, actually thinking like, fuck, I'm 55 and wow, this is my life. How did this train wreck happen? And I started reflecting back on like, wow, had I known at age 25 when I really started to kind of get out in the world really fully on my own, and I started making decisions based on a certain, you know, vision of what I wanted my life to look like. You know, I'll do A, then B, then C, and then I'll be able to do D, and then E, and then F, and then, you know, but thinking about like retirement age, that what my life was going to look like. And here I am edging up to that time, and it looks nothing like that at all. I mean, completely like, wow, who would have thunk it? And so once I kind of got through the grieving part, I was like, wow, isn't that interesting? This situation I'm in right now is the sum result of all my decision making in the last 35 years as an adult. Wow. And getting into a place where I'm reflecting back on what incorporation has really meant, and reflection, and thinking about what a power statement, or that vision, that sort of short mantra we have men come up and create for themselves as the person they want to be in life, and seeing that, you know, just kind of moving into the spiritual realm a little bit, that there's all these little jokes about like God laughs while we make plans, and other little, you know, sayings like that. And I really get it now. It's like there's part of me that realizes I don't have to be consuming all my thinking. I don't have to be dealing with the results of my plan. Right? I have no control over the results, even though I feel like that's how we, especially men, we're tend to brought up thinking like, hey, it's on us. Like, we got to get the jobs so we can provide for our families, so we can have take our families on the vacations and make sure our wives feel good about who they are and support them doing their thing, and take care of our family, extended families, and blah, 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 all this stuff, you know. And some people can do that. We talked about this the other day too, like looking at the Elon Musks of the world and being like, wow, how does one guy do all that stuff? Seems like he kind of knew how to make plans. But then in other realms, such as my life, I'm realizing that it's not about focusing on the results of the plans. It's focusing on the day-to-day result of, you know, can I look back on my day and say, I lived a day as the man I want to be today, you know, and that I'm not compromising myself or making sacrifices on my values and standards in hopes of them resulting in some outcome down the road that I don't have control over, that I really don't have control over. So, I think for me, the driving factor now is, for instance, in my vision of myself right now, I identify my strengths as being intuitive, being curious, a good listener, and being creative. And I know that if I can find ways every day to be at least in one, or ideally all four, of experiencing those in moments where my curiosity is up, you know, in a conversation with a friend, or my intuition's up, where I'm really trying to, you know, just be in my, not looking at facts and figures and being intellectual, but just really being into the feeling into like, what is the connection, the relationship here? Or listening, just really paying attention to what someone else is, you know, sharing with me, or just listening, just as a concept around like paying attention to what's going on in the world. And the creativity of like designing my life, and having an active hand in enjoying the process that I can create. And if I do one or more of those things every day, at some points, then the result I experience myself as is being a confident, joyful, wholehearted man, which is what I claimed to be 7 years ago that I wanted to live into. So and that's, I don't want to be a joyful, wholehearted, confident man 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. Like I want to be that today. I want to be that right now. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's, the incorporation process has been just looking at that, what needs to be removed from my life in order for there to be space for those four things to show up. Mm-hmm. Because I used to be really busy, and a lot of it was fun, but I wasn't thinking consciously about what I was bringing to the world, like I am now. It was more about what's the world bringing to me, and that was a big flip.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think about, I've had mentors over the years talk to me about the difference between process and results, and focusing my attention on being a more process-oriented person than a results-driven person. And I've even heard myself say that over the years, to encourage men to be more focused on on the process than the results. It's the journey, not the destination. But in reality, I think both are important. Think about if I put on my GPS and I'm navigating somewhere I've never been before, the GPS highlights the milestones, right? The turns in the journey, which I think of as the results. Those could be achievements throughout my life, the bullet points. But if in between those 2 points, driving all over the place, and off the road, then it's really not a smooth ride. It's taking me off my course. It's ping-ponging around. And so I think both are actually really important. And being that person every day, because today may not be the day where we initiate a whole generation of men. That's a result, right? That's something I look back on and say, all right, how did we do? Right. That's further down the road. That's 12 steps ahead from where we are now. But am I being who I want to be today that will reflect a good journey at the end? That's the biggest question. And I have that in my focus right now too, is regardless of what I chose to do today, regardless of how I navigated my life in these last 24 hours, when I lay down and I check in with myself, am I happy with the life that I live today? Am I content? Am I satisfied? Did I live a good life today? Did I do my best today? And letting that be my checkpoint.
Yeah. Well, I would even say that, with the vision of Rising Man, when you go to bed at night, it could even be as distinct as was a man who was living life today, the man who is, capable of initiating a whole generation of men, right? And if you can go to bed with a yes, I was, then in a sense, that mission's already accomplished, sort of in a non-linear, temporal way. And yeah, if you're able to pass on that standard and those teachings of what you're accruing, with wisdom of just what does it take to become a man who could have that potential, and handing that off to other men, then, and sons and their sons, then that makes the vision actually, possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And last thought that I have, and then I guess we can start to wrap it up, is especially over the past 6 months since I've lived in Austin, before that too, but especially in these last 6 months, moving to a completely new place, new people who may have heard about me before or listened to the podcast before but didn't really know me. I'm getting so many more reflections about people just appreciating the way that I am in interactions, just conversations, just casual too, whether it's like a workout that we're doing together or just people I run into socially. So many more reflections of people just saying, wow, just in one way or another, appreciating the way that I show up, appreciating the way that I am, watching how I am with my family, with my wife, with my kids, the way that I am present in conversation with them and genuinely interested in them. And that means so much more to me than the bullet points that I can put on my resume or the achievements that I can notch on my belt from over the years. I really mean that too. Like those are the things that I really care about. And at the end of the day, at the end of my life, that's what is going to matter most to me, is how people experience me on a day-to-day basis and how I experience myself day to day. the achievements are cool, of course. I think it's important to have those targets to shoot for, because if not, then I really wouldn't know what I was doing with myself every day. But I found that that's more and more what I really value.
Yeah, I've been thinking more of my the missions I've had in the past about what I want to achieve is becoming more of side effects. Side effects. The things that happen as because of who I am. I'm not who I am because of the mission. And that's helped me just stay focused on the value of being who I want to be in an authentic way every day. Because the truth is, he may not have tomorrow. We just don't know. So, yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, pretty cool that we got to do this out here in this place that we love so much.
Yeah.
With men doing the work and actually sharing this message and context. I love being out here with you, man. I really appreciate who you are and all the support that you've lent towards my vision over the years. And it feels really great to have a brother like you on the path to create what we want to see in the world.
Thank you. Feels the same, brother. It's amazing the journey we've been able to take as friends since I met you in 2013. Actually, is when I met you.
Yeah. End of 2012.
End of 2012. Yeah. Wow, 10 years. Yeah. So what a privilege and blessing, and yeah, feels like a good brotherhood between us, and just creating this together with you has been awesome. So thank you.
Well, more to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
More to come, man.